In this tutorial, we are going to look at switch statements. We learned about branching. Switch statements are very similar to branching, or to the branch node. They're just a different way of doing that kind of decision-based flow control. So I have my BP test. I've just dragged it out here. Let's open them up. And if we remember, branching worked on conditionals. So a branch node would take a true or a false in this condition. We're not directly usually going to use true or false. We're going to have variables do that for us. And we can also compare variables such as integers with less than, greater than, equals to. We can also combine these conditionals using and, or, and not. Switch statements work slightly differently. We are going to type in switch, and you can see there are a lot of switch statements. Traditionally, we can use switch on two different things. One are enumerators. We will learn about that much later in this class. Let's not bother with that right now. Let us do the most basic type of switch, which is switch on int. I found that by just searching it. We can click it. And you can see there is one input data pin which says selection, and it's an integer. There's a default pin, and we can add pins. We can also remove pins by right-clicking and hitting remove. So if you notice, as we add pins, the numbers just increase. There's this start index. If I change that, you can see it just changes my start number, but everything keeps incrementing by 1. So it's 2, 3, 4, 5. If I go back to 0, it'll be 0, 1, 2, 3. All that switch on int does is it takes the selection number and then it just runs that particular function. So if I were to print string here and print 0, make it stay on the screen, you can see our selection is 0. I come back, hit play, it says 0. Same thing, if I was to plug in 2, change our selection to 2, it's going to run this print string and print out 2. And you can see it prints out 2. So that's basically how it works, fairly simple. The only thing of note is this default value. So let's just use that real quick. And I'm going to print out default. If we were to have a selection whose pins doesn't exist, so our pins only go from 0, 1, 2, 3. I could even remove 3 just by right-clicking it. And so now it's just 0, 1, 2. But if my selection was 100, that is a pin that doesn't exist, it is just going to run the default. So when our option isn't available, it just runs the default. Come here, run it. You can see it runs the default. It just says default right there. One simple example of where we may use switch statements in a real game is, imagine you have a weapon, say some kind of gun that has different firing modes. Maybe it has a single shot, maybe it has a burst, and then maybe it has a full auto. We could associate those three, so I could say 0 is single shot, 1 is burst, and 2 is full auto. And when we press a button, we could just increment the int value. We can just cycle it between 0, 1, 2, and then we could pass it through this switch on int. So if it was 0, which is single shot, we'll just set all the things we need to set for that. Maybe the UI needs to change to reflect that. When they left click to fire, that code also needs to change. That'll run through that switch. When they hit the button to switch the firing mode, we change the int. So now they're in burst fire mode, so that's 1. Same thing. We'll run through here, and that is going to affect the UI. When they hit left click, how they fires, and same thing when they hit the button, it goes to 2. That's full auto. That is just one example of when we can use switch on ints. When we look at enumerators later, we'll find a much more powerful way of using these. This is just good to know. It complements branch very nicely. And with knowing switch, branch, and for loops, we now know the entirety of flow control in programming. Thank you for watching.